You're now watching the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
So let's talk about the NFL draft. And we touched on it when they made the picks. We haven't had a chance to follow up with everybody on the rest of the draft. So let's look through it here. By the way, the Eagles are ranked pretty high as far as the pundits that rank these drafts. You can never really tell. But, the names on paper get the pundits to evaluate who had a good draft and who did not. So the Chicago Bears obviously get number one because they got two starting players in their first 9 picks. And then they reasoned the Steelers had a pretty good draft. They got a couple starters out of it. And the Detroit Lions were ranked 3rd by The Athletic. They got Terry and Arnold with their number 1 pick, who the Eagles were interested in. And then the Eagles were 4th. So the Eagles got Quinyon Mitchell, what I think was a home run to sit there at 22 and get him, the cornerback from Toledo. I think he's the best corner in the draft. Cooper DeJean from Iowa. We'll see what they do with him. I have a feeling he'll be a slot corner early on and then probably transition to safety later in his career. The strangest pick of the draft, but a pick that a lot of people think has promise, Jalyx Hunt from Houston Christian, started at Cornell, I believe. Edge rusher, still in development. They've got time to develop him. Will Shipley, tough-nosed running back from Clemson. And then they got Ainias Smith, the wide receiver of Texas A&M, very undersized, but a dynamic return guy and maybe a threat as a slot. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., the linebacker from Clemson. Everybody, of course, is all about that pick. We'll see if he can play a linebacker in today's NFL where you have to cover. Trevor Keegan. I have to laugh because I feel, well, they got Trevor Keegan in the 5th round. That's a home run. Who knows after the 4th round how these guys are. But anyway, Trevor Keegan is a guard from Michigan. You can't go wrong taking an offensive lineman from Michigan. They usually pan out. Johnny Wilson, the big wide receiver from Florida State, also in the 6th round, 6'6" guy. He's got some downside to him, not real fast. And then Dylan McMahon, a center from NC State. So that was your draft. Like I said, I have no idea how good this draft is going to be until I see him. And I always have to laugh at the people that look at drafts in the back end, the later rounds, and go, "Wow, they got a really good player." The NFL evaluation is a little different from how they play in college. So also, it remains to be seen. But here's there's an interesting dynamic that I heard somebody say, I forget, some national football analyst pundit say that the reason why Howie Roseman gets a lot of acclaim is that he drafts players that all these draft experts have on their board. Like, oh, see, I read about that guy, so Howie must have gotten a good pick. Like I say, I have no idea, but most of the experts say the Eagles did pretty well in that draft. All righty, then. Let's hear more about the NFL draft as far as how the Eagles did with our guest today. A draft expert from way back. He's been analyzing the NFL draft for a long time now, most recently, of course, with ESPN, ESPN.com. Before that, Bleacher Report. He, of course, is the great Matt Miller. Hello, Matt. Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys.
All right, let's get right into it because you're in the business of evaluating how teams do in the draft. And, most of the people that I've read or listened to say that the Eagles had a really good draft. In fact, one of the top 5 drafts of anybody in this particular draft. Do you agree?
I do, yeah. And I think, the Eagles are one of those teams every year where we praise what they do in the draft because they select a lot of players that we know. Howie Roseman drafts productive players from big colleges, Georgia, Iowa. It's like he has a prototype. But then this year, he goes and gets a corner from Toledo. It's like the anti-Howie Roseman. But Quinyon Mitchell is a hell of a player. I thought it was a great pick. I think with Philly, we all praise the drafts because they do what we think they should do. They address their needs. They draft, and there's a lot of best player available at a position of need, even like Jalen Carter last year, was that kind of pick. So I think a lot of the armchair general managers like myself love what Philly does because of that. But there's some high risk as well. Guys like Jalyx Hunt in the 3rd round. I thought that was a little bit too early for Jalyx Hunt. However, he fits the type of Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith. And so if it works out, no one's going to be like, dang, you drafted this guy 50 spots earlier than, Mel Kiper Jr. and all the draftniks thought you should. If it works out, we're all going to praise the, kind of the fortitude to go get a developmental player.
Let's talk about the first two because I agree. He doesn't come from a big school, and that was irrelevant to me because this guy checks a lot of boxes. And the only thing he doesn't check, against big time competition every day, but he did play against Ohio State. We're talking about Quinyon Mitchell. He clearly had the most goods of any cornerback. So I guess my question to you is, did they take a chance here, or are they so in tune with the draft that they just knew that he was going to be there when they selected? Because I really think that they were going to even move up when he got to be like in the 17, 18 area. They would trade it to that spot, but they read it correctly.
Yeah. I apologize. I think it's that they knew there would be a corner there was the thing, right? Like you maybe don't know that Mitchell will be there, but you like enough corners to where you could say, okay, Mitchell's gone. We like Terrion Arnold. If Terrion Arnold's gone, we like Mitchell. If they're both gone somehow, we really like Cooper DeJean, who they ended up getting a pick number 40. So it's a little bit of calculation, and that's why as a front office, it's super, super important to have connections and to have sources. And people will ask me like, well, why would an NFL team tell you anything? Well, because I can tell them what I'm hearing, other teams of like, I can't tell you how many times I'll get a call from a college scouting director and be like, hey, where do you hear the corners are coming off the board? And you'll say, I might not be able to say, hey, I hear that, Philly's going to draft one and Detroit's going to draft one, but I can say, I've kind of heard the range on this player is probably in the early 20s. That helps them narrow down where that expected range is going to be. And so it is calculated. It absolutely is, but it's also the knowledge of we can sit at 22, and especially after you watch the board, because there's only X amount of teams that are going to take a corner in the first round. So you can watch the board and say, okay, at this spot, we know this team's not taking a corner. I think once the Colts didn't take a corner at 15, you felt like, dang, there's one of these dudes is going to drop to us. And especially so when Indy didn't and when Jacksonville didn't, like the runway was clear for the top corner to fall to Philly. So I think they played it beautifully, honestly.
So lo and behold, Cooper DeJean is there for him, and they take him as well. So I want you to look deeply into his soul. Where does he fit in the NFL? Because there's the obvious. In fact, it was the first question asked to the kid about being a white cornerback here with the Philadelphia media. So where does he fit in right now in the NFL?
I think he could.
In your opinion?
I think he's an outside corner who can play on the inside and who can play safety. I think a lot of the pre-draft evaluation for him and for everyone is about traits. And you try to say, okay, where would these traits best fit into the NFL? What is the potential of all these traits? And now that we know where Cooper's going to be playing, we know, okay, it's a big Fangio defense. I actually like him at safety in this defense just because of he's going to be putting so many opportunities to make plays on the ball with the ball in front of him. I think he does that really, really well. I mean, he's got great burst. He has really good size. He's a good tackler. He sees the field exceptionally well. And I've watched him make so many plays, whether it be as a defensive back or a punt returner. When he has the ball in his hands, it's pretty dangerous. And I think at safety, you're going to get more of those opportunities for him to have some pick six potential. But I think you get him into rookie camp, you see how he moves. They might say, hey, we love that size as an outside corner, and we'll have 2 rookie corners next year. But personally, I think he would be a damn good free safety in the NFL.
I actually think he fits better than Blankenship. I like Blankenship's aggressiveness, but it appears that DeJean can cover a little better from that spot. So I would think that he immediately moves ahead of Blankenship with C.J. Gardner-Johnson at the other. All right, let's look at the third round draft pick. I know nothing about him. To educate our fan base here on what they're getting with Hunt from Houston Christian.
Let's say y'all aren't watching Houston Christian games on Saturday nights in Philly. Come on, what's going on?
I didn't watch one. I got to be honest.
All right, he's the only player of theirs I watched as well. So I mean, it's all about upside. I mean, we used to call it a triangle. It's height, length, speed. He has all the triangle numbers that you're looking for to where you believe that you can coach a player up and tap into those traits and develop, pass rush moves, develop the strength. But he is incredibly raw. So I would say, like, this almost feels like a redshirt player where you draft him and you love the traits, and you love the upside, and he's probably going to be on the 53 every week, but I don't know that he's going to play a whole lot. And I think that fits the model there. If they've brought guys like Nolan Smith along slowly, but I look at this and say Bryce Huff is a stud. He's going to lock down one side. Josh Sweat is a stud. He's going to lock down the other. Hopefully Nolan is your third guy rotating in. And I would say Jalyx is that dude that you're just trying to develop for the future. That you hope you strike lightning here, where I think they did such a good job in the first 2 rounds of checking off needs, and they've done such a good job of extending young players where you kind of look at the board and say, man, I don't know if we have any true needs in the third round. If we can hit on this pass rusher with elite length and elite speed, that's a bargain. That's a steal, right? And so you're trying to do that basically, as opposed to saying, here's how this guy factors in 2024. I think this is a 2025 type player.
You mentioned a redshirt player. The last redshirt player they took, which makes me wary, this pick was Davion Taylor. He was a redshirt, and then he was a redshirt, and then he was a redshirt, and then he was another redshirt, and it never worked out for him. But listen, that's okay. I'm fine with that. You never know how this stuff is going to work out. So let's look at the rest of the draft. Did they get anybody in your mind that really has the upside to be a really good player in this league, starting with the running back, Will Shipley?
Yeah, I like Will a lot. I mean, obviously Saquon's the dude. He's going to get the touches, but Will's ability in the passing game is really, really fun. I think another thing with this is this new kickoff rule. A guy like Will Shipley can have a pretty big impact back there. Same with Ainias Smith that they got in the 5th round. I look at both those dudes and say, the kickoff is back. You have to have someone back there who can make someone miss and then has the speed to run away from them. It's almost like being an outside zone runner. The kickoff is now, or kick returner, excuse me. So I think Shipley and Smith are going to, have a potentially very, very big roles there. But, Shipley could be the Kenny Gainwell replacement. I mean, he's not factoring in above Saquon. We know that. But, getting him some touches in the screen game, spelling Saquon, there's going to be a lot of value there. I liked this draft all the way around. I think, with Smith in the 5th, Johnny Wilson in the 6th, you're taking guys who have kind of an elite trait that they can hang their hat on. I talked about this on day 3 on the ESPN broadcast stuff. When you're a late round pick, you want a trait that's on your business card that says, this is what I do. Ainias Smith, his trait is run after catch ability. When the ball's in his hands, and he played some tailback in his career, played receiver, was a really good return man. When the ball's in his hands, he's electric. With Johnny Wilson, he's 6'8" almost at wide receiver. That is an elite trait. That's something that stands apart. And I know that this is something that the Eagles value in their scouting department is what is your calling card trait? Both those guys have those. So I think with all 3 of those offensive players from day 3, they have a particular role and a particular skill set that can allow them to get on the field earlier, as opposed to like normally you would say, the team was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, day 3 draft picks, you're probably not making an impact. But I think each of those guys has a pathway to getting on the field.
All right, let's look at the linebacker that they selected. It's obviously a very sentimental selection. A lot of people in Philadelphia really appreciate it. Can Jeremiah Trotter be a linebacker in this day and age in the NFL, where you really have to cover and where they don't really value a linebacker?
That's the thing, right? I mean, I love the sentimentality of it, but let's not overlook the fact that over the past 3 years in the ACC, he was one of the best football players in that conference, right? At a big-time program at Clemson. He wasn't just, this wasn't a nepotism play in college football. He was a really, really good player. You could turn on games on Saturdays to see that. I think the question will be, can he play on third down? I'm not so sure of that. I think that's why he was available in the 5th round. He's not the biggest guy, but he plays like a big guy. 6 foot, 228, but he plays like he's 240. Everything's downhill. There's not a lot of great sideline to sideline movement. I think in some ways it's interesting because he's kind of like a Nakobe Dean. Who they drafted in the 3rd, another undersized guy who loves to play with the ball in front of him. He's not going to give you a lot of run and chase outside the tackle. So, but we saw last year how important depth is at linebacker. So, you look at linebackers been devalued. Man, I would say look at Kansas City and San Francisco. Their linebackers are pretty good. They were the last 2 teams standing last year. So you have to have linebackers even if they've been devalued. I know y'all brought in Devin White, but I think there's a role for Trotter as maybe a 3rd linebacker. I mean, the 4-3 is pretty much dead in this day and age, but I still think you got to have that depth, and you love to have young, inexpensive depth at these positions. So there is still good value for him there.
Yeah, could be a really good special teamer too. All right, Matt, we're talking to Matt Miller, ESPN draft analyst. Matt, last question is now that your life has been hectic, obviously over the last couple of months. So now, are you looking at players for next year already?
Yeah, so I have you up on one tab talking to you. And the tab next to it is my 2025 Google spreadsheet. So yeah, I'm already looking at players for next year. It's funny, like I know everybody's like, oh, like our lives are very hectic over the spring, but I am probably addicted to this, and I get very bored very quickly. It's too cold in Missouri right now. It's like 80 degrees today. My pool isn't open yet. My kids are at school. Like, what else am I going to do? Might as well watch football, right? So, going to start watching some quarterbacks for next year and getting baseline notes on those guys down so that when September rolls around, I already have that foundation to build on.
All right. I'm just curious to know of the 6 quarterbacks that were taken. Obviously, not counting the first couple who we know are highly ranked. I don't know how these teams evaluate quarterbacks. Like Bo Nix, in your mind, is that a good selection? Is J.J. McCarthy a good selection? Is Michael Penix a good selection? When you look at those guys, is it more desperation to have a quarterback or legit?
Oh, it's desperation. Absolutely. Now, that doesn't mean they can't work out, right? I mean, it can still work out, but it is absolutely rooted in desperation because, at the quarterback position right now, there's the haves and the have-nots. There's no middle market anymore. Look at the last 25 years have been dominated by 2 guys, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. A couple other years, great teams won the Super Bowl. You could say the Giants teams, with Eli, they had a great defensive line and got lucky with 2 crazy catches. The Eagles team that beat the Patriots, that was a damn good team, right? And a little bit of a team of destiny to some degree. The Rams, greatest defensive tackle of all time, right? But by and large, over the last 25 years, the Super Bowl has been won by 2 guys, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. So I feel like you either have that guy or you don't. And because of that, teams are swinging wildly. It's the bottom of the 9th and you got to hit a grand slam is how these teams are swinging right now. And so I think that's what we're seeing, and Philly's in a great situation with Jalen. And now they're in that spot where, okay, we know what we have at quarterback. Let's build around him. And I think we're seeing if you don't have a guy who's a top 5 or 6 quarterback, what are you doing? You got to either, start over, which like we just saw Chicago do that. Justin Fields wasn't terrible, but they said, hey, he's never going to be what we need to win the NFC East or the NFC in general. So you gotta restart basically. And I think that's what we're seeing so many teams like Washington do. Sam Howell, you gave him like 15 games. Like, nope, never mind. Let's move on and try this again. And we'll see the Giants do that next year. Right? They'll be 25. We're going to be talking about the Giants taking a quarterback. So it's the middle market is absolutely dead at quarterback.
Matt, always a pleasure, man. Thank you for coming on. Continued success with your draft. Dominate your life. But I guess it's so much fun that you don't even look at it that way. It's not work. It's never work when we're in this business.
Absolutely
right?
not. It's all fun all the time.
All right, thank you to Matt Miller for his expertise on the Eagles draft. Let's just touch on the Phils. They're on the West Coast. We tend to forget about them when they're in the West Coast. Very few people stay up that late to watch them, and a lot of good NBA on last night, including Denver eliminating the Lakers with a shot by Murray. He's fantastic. Jamal Murray's a really good player. In any event, the Phillies lost to the Angels last night on a very weird play, a wild pitch by Sir Anthony Dominguez, and then Garrett Stubbs, when he chased it down, threw wild to the covering Dominguez at the plate, and Mike Trout scored from second base, and that was the winning run for the Angels. Listen, the Phillies have been on a really pretty good run here, so I'm not going to complain about a loss last night. They've got a couple hitters emerging. Alec Bohm was hit out of his mind. Trey Turner's been fantastic at the plate. You still have some of the worries. You have a little bit of a Harper worry. You have a big Castellanos worry. I think Rojas has come back down to earth. But I just mentioned Sir Anthony Dominguez. They got a problem. Sir Anthony Dominguez is a high-leverage reliever who's not delivering. His ERA is close to 10. He is not getting the job done. This may necessitate a move down to the minor leagues, but who would they bring up in that kind of a situation? These are high-leverage innings. I don't believe they have a guy down there who they can count on in a high leverage situation. So that's going to push everybody up. Soto has been really up and down. Kerkering, by survival, is going to be the guy that's going to have to handle these Dominguez innings now if they have to send him to the minors or to keep him up. He's just not getting the job done, and they've got to do something about it. So you're talking about at the top, you're talking about Hoffman and Alvarado, and then the third guy that you count on high leverage right now has got to be Kerkering. There's really nobody else. So that is my worry for the Phillies. But like I say, they're playing pretty good baseball right now. That's a major worry. I don't worry about any of the rest of it. Their starting rotation has been fabulous. Their hitters have been good enough to carry the mail. All right, that's going to be the end of the Mike Missanelli podcast today. I'm going away for a couple of weeks, so I'll be doing a podcast from on the road, especially if the Sixers continue this series. We'll follow every game, continue to follow it. Again, you can reach me, email mike@mikemiss.com. Check out my website, mikemiss.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at MikeMiss25. If you're headed down the shore, beautiful weather this weekend, get down in Tally Vineyards for a little wine action. It's a vineyard I have part ownership in. I love it. And your lawn, a natural lawn. Don't go anywhere else but natural lawn. My lawn, I had to mow it because I'm going away for a couple of weeks. It just look. I want to take a picture of it and post it. It's just so. I love a beautiful lawn. I don't know what it is about my genes, but I love a nice green lawn where it's coming up healthy and stuff. And that's because of the great people at Natural Lawn. Darren, anything else? Did we forget anything else? Don't forget that first basket of the day bet on BetRivers, where if you can get a profit boost up to 100%. If you bet who is going to score the first basket of tonight's Sixers-Knicks game, just go to the BetRivers app. It's a fantastic app that you should have on your phone. We good? Everything good?
Depending on your golf schedule, we will try and get a reaction in after tonight's game at some point tonight or tomorrow.
Well, we're not going to do it tonight because I'll be on the road.
On the road tonight, but we'll get a reaction.
So it would have to be sometime tomorrow, and I don't even know what time I'm getting in. But anyway, I won't be playing golf till Friday anyway. So, all right, we good? I think we're good. Everybody have a great rest of the day, and look forward to the warm weather. Get outdoors. For Darren, I'm Mike Missanelli. It's the Mike Missanelli Podcast. Tell your friends and neighbors to subscribe for free, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.